divorce rates among entrepreneurs range from around 43% to 48%.
The husband's like, well, I made more money. Like, you didn't bring as much value to the relationship. If your wife's at home looking after kids, that's childcare you didn't have to pay for, and that's a very exorbitant cost.
With over a decade of experience running a business and a marriage, the powerhouse couple shares the secrets to balancing love and entrepreneurship.
On today's podcast, I have a very special guest. Now, this could be the best guest I've ever had.
You should be looking at your partners like their differences are there to help you grow in areas that you are not skilled at.
Or the worst guest I've ever had.
Because I'm already doing it for the wrong reasons. I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for because.
What do you mean the wrong reasons? She's the head of operations in our company, absolutely amazing individual. We've been working together for 13 years now. I thought I'd bring on the relationship expert. Everyone's been asking for it. Let me just introduce her. This is my wife, Jess.
Hello. Female will have more mental load than males.
We get asked a lot, how do we make it work? How does it work?
One definitely is...
All right, on today's podcast, I have a very special guest. Now, this may be insanity. I'm not sure how this conversation is going to go. It could end up hectic and chaotic. This could be the best guest I've ever had or the worst guest I've ever had. I'm not 100% sure. But a lot of people in our community have asked me to have this guest on the program. It comes up almost every week in our community of business owners and also for people who are in relationships. But here are some statistics about relationships that I wanted to highlight straight away before I introduce my guest, who is an expert in this area, a so-called expert in this area. Now, divorce rates show that divorce rates among entrepreneurs range from around 43% to 48%. So almost 50% of people who are entrepreneurial, who work with their partner, will normally end in divorce. So that's a 1 in 2 rate. Also, here are some other interesting statistics that my team have sent through. Average weekly conversations of married couples who are engaged in meaningful conversations per week is around about 20 minutes. That's not around logistical topics, errands, and schedules. So today, I want to highlight this topic, and I really want to, I thought I'd bring on the expert. Everyone's been asking for it. Let me just introduce her. This is my wife, Jess. So she's the head of operations in our company. Absolutely amazing individual. Anyone who puts up with me is pretty extraordinary. But anyway, Jess, welcome.
Hello.
I've already getting
expert. You said expert, maybe self-proclaimed.
You're an expert in our relationship.
Expert in our relationship, yeah.
But we get asked a lot. Like, it's very, very common for people in our community. I mean, we've been working together for 13 years now. We've gone through a lot of ups and downs, and I think we work fairly well together. I mean, I enjoy working with you most of the time, but we spend a lot of time together. I mean, we go on holidays quite a bit. We travel quite a lot. I spend more time with you than anybody else. And so we get asked a lot, how do we make it work? How does it work? We tend to get along pretty well. We don't really argue and fight, or if we do, we just get it off of our chest and we say what we have to say and then we just get on with it. Mm-hmm. We tend not to hold grudges. There's not a lot of bullshit. So I think these questions come up a lot, and I've got a ton of questions here from the community. So welcome.
Thank you.
Okay,
I was expecting more fireworks. Like, this is the most amazing woman in the world. I wanted a little bit. I might have to just get the team to make it a trailer dedicated to me. It's like my own love's dedication to myself.
Oh, here we go. All right. We're already going down a bad path. Excellent.
This could end up in a really big Barney.
All right, it could be. All right, we'll keep it. We'll do what most couples do. We'll smile in public and argue in private and hate each other to death in private. But no, let's get into it. So I've got a whole bunch of questions here.
All right.
From the community, and let's just jump straight into it. So the first question is that we've got here is, how can a business owner not bring their stress home every day to their partner? How do you get into your feminine after a busy day? Go for it.
I'm going to start with the feminine one, right?
Okay.
Because I have a different perspective on this. So I think if you're already asking the question of how can I get into my feminine, you've already made a mistake, I think. And the reason I say that is because when I think about myself as a woman and other women that I know, I think you maybe have this perception that being in your feminine is like, Barbie in the Barbie movie. It's like being girly and blah, blah, blah. But then also if you're wanting to get into your feminine, I feel like you've already got this perceived guilt on you in some way that you need to get in your feminine in order to be that way for someone else or for some other reason, because it's already like maybe something you feel guilty about. So instead of thinking you're trying to get into my feminine, which the masculine and feminine concept is great, and you can probably explain more about that later.
Yeah.
It's good for that understanding. But when it comes to getting into your feminine, I think the purpose that you need to do it is for yourself. So I try to not think of it as I'm going to get into my feminine and I need to do it because I want to show up for Michael and be a great wife, and because I'm already doing it for the wrong reasons. I'm doing it for you. I'm doing it for because
What do you mean the wrong reasons? That's a perfect reason.
Well, it's a good reason, but it's like outside of myself, right? Yeah. And that's not very purposeful. So I try to think of it as, okay, I need to get into the best energy for Jess. So I'm trying to tap into my Jessness, essentially. That's my term for it. So I'm just trying to find me authentically. Who is my authentic person? What gets me into my best energy? And what makes me feel the best? Because that's where I'm going to operate the best. And at the end of the day, that's what your partner fell in love with, is that authentic self, who you are, to your being, like what you love, what lights you up. So if you are tapping into your own my Jessness, but you're whoever you are, you can call it whatever you like.
Michael.
And it's your Michaelness. You're doing it for you. And so you're not worrying about the effects of, well, if I'm not in that energy, what's it going to be? Like, what's the fallout of it? If you're doing it for you, that's great. And for me, naturally, I think I'm a quite playful person. I'm a little bit childlike wonder, get into that sort of frame. I get excited by very small things. Like if a pelican swims past a house, I'm like, oh my God, a pelican. That's literally every day. But they're the little things.
Yeah, wow, it's a dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But
we're having a conversation around finance, and the next second you're like, wow, it's a dog. And I'm like, okay, yep, bring it back. Let's go.
But that's a little moment that helps me get back into my Jessness or my feminine energy to be able to keep operating through the day. So I guess also some other tips I would have is I literally have one playlist on my Spotify account, which is called Get Out of the Gap. So when I've fallen in the gap of falling in a hole, I have 5 songs on that playlist that I know within 2 beats of them playing, my state and energy changes immediately.
I did not know about this. What are these songs? I'm going to create Jess's playlist and then just put them on all day long in the house.
Yeah, sometimes I have to put them on every day. But one definitely is September by Earth, Wind and Fire. That's such a fire song. It's just so preppy. It's so good. Do you know the song?
No.
No, we'll play it on the way home. It'll be great.
Then the argument starts.
Yeah. Dolly Parton, 9 to 5.
Your playlist
Get that. It's just for energy-wise. You just need something that's going to switch you into mode. What else you have? Magic Carpet Ride by Steppenwolf. I think that's a classic song. Makes you want to dance, makes you want to just feel happy and stuff. So they're 3 other songs I know that are on there. But that's just a really simple, within 3 minutes of one song, I'm cool, whole state's changed, I'm back into my Jessness, I can get on with the day. But then I think deeper to that, if you have a reoccurring problem that keeps coming up, a deeper emotion, then that's where you need to start thinking and being aware about, okay, well, it's not just about me trying to get into my energy. There's a emotional problem there that I need to go deal with that emotion. So there's the deeper work, and then there's kind of the just change my state stuff.
How do you deal with that emotional work?
Well, shameless plug, I do your process of potential, Michael, that you teach at Thrive Time. That's probably the simplest and easiest way. Obviously you teach that concept of if you are stuck in an emotion, you're only seeing one side of it. So you need to balance that out. And as much as you can do stuff like journaling and stuff, which do help, it's not, I can't get there sometimes with just that method because you aren't asking yourself the right questions or going deep enough in order to be open and aware to what are you not seeing. So I would technically use that. I'd make sure I have some self-time to reflect, make sure I do something like the process of potential to balance out an emotion, or utilize a coach. I have lucky in some instances.
Go on.
That I have
Explain.
one of the world's best coaches in my household. So if I'm open to Michael giving me advice, I will ask him to give me advice. I'm like, hey, I'm dealing with this problem. Can you help me talk through it? And that's a really valuable thing. People should tap into someone that, not just anyone, you should be careful if you ask for advice. Like, make sure they have the results, make sure they can give you proper, well advice. But I would utilize you as well, or a coach or something.
Awesome. Okay, cool. All right, let's go back to it because now I've got your playlist. I know what to consistently play throughout the house throughout the day to keep you in a good emotional state.
Don't ruin my songs for me.
Now, how do you communicate with your partner? So this is another question. How do you communicate with your partner that the business is important and why they are spending so much time on the business and how it adds value to the relationship? So I'm just trying to, these are like paragraph questions instead of actual fucking questions. So I don't know who sent these in. So by the sounds of this, it's how do you communicate with your partner as to why both of your values are important? So I assume based on this question, you've got the male, let's say husband and wife. I'll just generalize here because this is what it sounds like. Husband's working all day in the business, comes home, wife says you don't spend enough time with the family. Wife wants more time with the family. Husband wants more time in the business because to him, making money is providing for the family. So it gives them the lifestyle. But then at the same time, maybe the wife isn't seeing what they're seeing is that it's taking time away from the family. So there's a conflict of values. They're sort of similar, but they're different and there's friction there. How do you communicate that business is important with your partner, or how do I do it with you? And then how do you do it with me back in return as to other areas of your life? Because you have different values. I have a high value in business, wealth creation, career, coaching, teaching, all of that stuff. So it's quite common for me to be out and about, hanging around people, doing stuff, building the business, building the empire. Whereas you have other values as well. How did we go? I mean, I can talk about it, but how did we go through it from your perspective to get some form of alignment and to create some sort of balance in the relationship?
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, also give your perspective as well after this. But I think we have just been, I think one of the good things about our relationship is that we are very open to growing and we are on the same page about we want to grow. And the best way to do that is going to be growing together rather than trying to pull each other in different directions, like, dogs on leads pulling in different directions. So I think, one, you've got to be open to having those uncomfortable, difficult conversations, but actually talking about it. So like if you don't have that kind of shared vision for where you're going and why you're doing things, then it becomes very difficult to sail in the same direction. You'll constantly find that you're off course. So I think we sit down regularly, at least every year we do generally sit down, especially at the start of the year when we're doing goal setting and stuff, like what's really important for this year, or like where do we want to be in 10 years, or where do we want to be in 5 years? And they're like big questions, but you don't have to have it all mapped out. But it's like there needs to be some understanding of what you each want. Otherwise, how do you ever get on board with, you're just going to be constantly in friction mode with each other. Because you literally can't get on the same page. So I think we talk about how business is important for each of us, like what we actually physically get out of business, how it meets each of our values. Because like you said, my highest value isn't business. Like majority of the time, business kind of fits into more of my fourth value. It does hit my highest value in some aspects, but like we're not the same, like it hits more on your higher values than mine. So it's about navigating that to understanding what each person actually wants to achieve in life. And then how do you then come together and build something together where you can both achieve what you want without one person having to like sacrifice heaps for the other one. So you can kind of zigzag the way, move in the direction that you want, but knowing that there's going to be push and pull along the way.
Something that I hear a lot of is like give and take, and something that I found is with most of the people that I coach around the area of relationship with business, it's always like there has to be sacrifice. And I don't know. I think we used to have that idea of sacrifice and give and take, but it always created friction. I think the term that people have to come to terms with, and by the way, I just want to say this to anyone who's listening here. You can't live an uncommon life and do common things. You can't think like a common person. And I remember just going way off topic and on one of my fucking tangents that I always have. I remember when we first started dating and things were starting to get a bit more serious, and we'd go out to dinner and you were still working your corporate job and I'm building a business. And there was this rule, can't talk about business, can't talk about work. Remember that?
Yeah.
And we would go to dinner and I'm like, cool, so how's your week going? Good. How are you? Yeah, I'm good. Cool. Gym going well? Yep, gym going good. Okay, cool. Your gym going good? Yep. Okay. So up to much this weekend? Oh yeah, that's right. We're hanging out together. You looking forward to coming to the movies? Yeah.
It's literally crickets with like nothing else to talk about.
It was the most boring it was the most boring dinners I've ever had. And then I remember having the conversation with you. I sat down and I said, look, here's the problem that I have. Everything's supposed to mold into the life that you want to create. So I've always had this idea of like, I can create anything that I want. I can live the life that I want. It doesn't matter whether I was smart at school, dumb at school, I can figure it out. And then I'm now in a relationship where we're trying to fall into the social norms or the social idealisms of what we got brought up with. Like most of your friends, they didn't have business owners as husbands or as partners back then. And so they would get home from work. They didn't both like their jobs. So they get home and they don't want to talk about work. Why? Because they both fucking hate work. So to them, they had other shit that was more important. Whereas you've always been career driven. You have a high value on financial structure. I've always had a high value on business and wealth creation and things like that. And now we can't talk about those values because the common rule in society is that we don't talk about business and work over dinner. The same as like most people don't talk about money around the dinner table. That is just broke people don't talk about money around the dinner table. Wealthy people talk about money around the dinner table because it's normal to them. So we then realize that you can't have an uncommon life and act like everybody else. We have to design our relationship the way that we wanted. And so then we would start going out to dinner and we designed the dinner that we wanted that suited our relationship and the things that were important to us. And then it was okay. But coming back to the conversation that you had before I get on to the next question, was with our relationship, I think that there's a lot of people put a lot of rules and a lot of ideas into what a relationship should look like instead of designing their relationship, instead of designing it around the life that they're trying to create. And what I find is that, you know, if I'm just going to generalize, as a woman who has family as their high value and then the husband has career or wealth as their high value, they see it as being a friction because he's working all the time. It's taking away time from the family. So she doesn't have the perfect, 2.5 kids or, this perfect fantasy picket fence lifestyle. Now, then he's frustrated because he doesn't have financial freedom, which is complete bullshit anyway. Like, I've never met someone who's financially free, and I've worked with some of the most wealthiest people on the planet. They have these fantasies and these stupid ideas that don't actually match. When they sit down together and go, okay, well, how does having a family actually help me be better in business? And remember when we had these conversations?
Yeah.
Where it's like, how do your values help me to be better in business? And so, like, with that partner, they have to become a better communicator because they've got a family, which now helps their business grow because most business owners are shit communicators. So when they look at it that way, spending time with family is actually helping them to grow a business.
Yeah.
And then for the wife, by having a husband who's career driven, they actually have better family time because when they spend time together, it's quality time. They can go on holidays. They can have a nice lifestyle. They can create memories, which most people can't. So they're working together instead of it being a give and a take. That was just my 2 cents worth anyway.
Yeah.
Anything you want to add to that?
No, but it goes on to a separate topic, I think, about value that people bring in relationships, which I think is an important topic. And I think one thing that sort of like brought it up more in the last year in particular for me, not that I don't think we necessarily have a problem in this area, but a lot of people do, in that, like, we've had a couple of close friends that are getting divorced, and in a couple of their situations, it's been brought up that, like, started off quite amicable, and then now it's kind of gotten to situations where the husband's like, well, I made more money. Like, you didn't bring as much value to the relationship. And it's like, that's sometimes a hard pill to swallow. And I think it's a common thing that happens with women, especially when there's kids involved. They then take on like a mother figure and are staying at home to look after the kids and stuff like that. Like, it's hard for a woman to be potentially devalued in that way, saying that you're not bringing value to the relationship. And I think what we did really well with our relationship is understanding, like, it sounds very transactional, but almost working out, like, here's everything we do. What value does that, like dollar value, does that actually bring to a relationship? Because if you look at a situation like that where like a woman gives up a lot to have children and then look after those children, but then it's like, well, if your wife's at home looking after kids, that's childcare you didn't have to pay for, and that's a very exorbitant cost. So if you're literally going through and working out, yes, it's transactional, what you bring to the relationship, you realize the value each of you bring. And I think that's a bit more of a wider perspective, so then you don't get into those situations where it's like, well, I make all the money, you're just at home doing this, rah, rah, rah. Like, you don't get into that conflict.
Yeah.
Like, what can you add to that?
Yeah. So look, there's been so many relationships that I've had to work with of career-driven people who make a lot of money, and also business owners who make a lot of money, who have a lot of friction in their relationship. Something that's really important is to sit there and to calculate the dollar value, as you mentioned, that each person brings to the relationship. Because something that I see is an issue is that it never gets spoken about. And this comes back to like, we don't talk about money in the family. But if you have a look, most relationships fall apart because of financial problems. So you don't have to talk about money, but that's okay. You don't have to talk about health either. You don't have to talk about your relationship. Like, you don't have to talk about anything you don't want to. But the things that you hide away from, eventually you're going to present themselves. And so you're going to have to fucking deal with it at some point.
Yeah.
So I think couples that don't talk, like, I meet guys and they're like, oh, yeah, I spend money on whatever I want. Like, my wife doesn't know anything about the bank or whatever. I pay the bills and, give them a wage every week. And I'm like, fucking hell, it sounds like slave labor to me. Like, what? Like, are you guys in a relationship? Like, aren't you working together on common objectives? I mean, you manage all of our finances. Now, we both know that I'm the moneymaker.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the goose that shits the golden eggs in the business, right? Because it's a personal brand.
Yeah, you always out-earn me.
100%.
I know, I understand that.
But you're responsible for the structure of the financials because you are so much more structured than I am. I'm highly creative, super driven, ambitious, chaotic, sort of half mental most of the time. And you're like the calming effect that's like, hang on, let's structure this. Let's organize things. I can't do what I do without you because you provide the structure around me to make sure that shit doesn't fall apart. And that is highly valuable. On the other hand, you can't do what you want to do without me, without the earner. So we work together as a team to make that work.
Yeah.
And I think what happens a lot of the time is that because these conversations don't happen and they're not honest. And I remember when we brought it up, for you, it pissed you off. Like, you were pissed when I'm starting to go, you'd go, well, I mean, I do the dishes and I'm like, cool, what do you think the dollar value of that, like 15 minutes every day, what do you think that that's worth?
Yeah.
Because when I think about time has a dollar value attached to it. Like, it's our most valuable asset. And if we have a look at money, money's an exchange of value. So someone can say, well, I do everything around the house. Great. That's fantastic. But I can hire a fucking cleaner for, I don't know, let's say $50 a day to come in and do a quick cleanup. Or maybe let's say $100 to do a quick cleanup, or even 150. Now, if I hire someone to come in and do a deep clean, I might pay them, let's say $500. I'm paying them $500 a week to do the job of cleaning the house. So essentially, if your responsibility in the relationship is I just clean the house, I can pay someone $500 to do that. I don't need you to do that. Now, if you do it, that saves us $500. Perfect. But you've got to have those honest conversations, because if you devalue yourself, and let's say I'm working 80 hours a week, which this is just an example. It's not saying I do this, but let's say I work 80 hours a week. I come home and then I get bollocked that I'm never at home. And this happens all the time with couples. I get bollocked because I'm not home. You crack the shits, but I'm putting the kids through childcare, through school, because it's important that they go to a private school or whatever, because that's what you want as my partner. So you want the best lifestyle for the kids. We get to go on holidays, all of that type of shit. You spend money on them all the time. You're buying them clothes. But I earn all of that money. Then the partner comes back and says, well, you work too much. Now all that's happening is you're devaluing everything that I provide. So the first thing that partner is going to come back with is, well, you just sit at home all day. And they go, well, I do the ironing. Yeah, but I can pay someone $200 a week to do the ironing. You have to be honest around the dollar value, because unless you're honest, you actually don't know what value you bring to the relationship.
Yeah.
And I know I've sort of taken over the conversation here, but this is what happens. I have to sit down with couples and show them, and the partner goes, okay, now I see that I'm devaluing my partner and they're devaluing me. This person is working their ass off and coming home. The least that I can do is cook dinner and not fucking complain about it. Because that dinner, now it's $100 on Uber Eats. Now, let's say I spend $100 a night or $150 a night on Uber Eats. That weighs up. There's,
$700 plus, isn't it?
Yeah, let's say it's $800 a week. Well, they don't have to do that. If I provide a nice meal when they go to work, and I had this conversation, I worked with a guy who was working in the finance industry. And he came to me and he said, I'm getting a divorce. And I said, why is that? Now, this guy made $5 million personal income the year I worked with him. That's take home, right? $5 million. And you know the person I'm talking about. And he says to me, I'm getting a divorce. She doesn't do fuck all. I don't like, what value does she bring? And I said, okay, well, let's sit there. And I grabbed the whiteboard. And I said, well, what value does she bring? And he goes, stuff all. She makes she works a sort of in corporate. And so let's say she makes $2,000 a week, which isn't too bad. It's not a bad wage. But he said she fucking spends more than she earns. There's new cushions on the couch. She has to eat all this beautiful food all the time. She's always going and buying organic food and all of this type of stuff. Now, because I've met the couple and I've spent time with them, I said, okay, well, let's see what the dollar value is. And I sat down and I said, okay, so she cooks all the time, right? Yep. It's all organic food. Yep. Okay, well, what value does that bring to you? Yeah, well, nothing. And I was like, bullshit. Can you perform better in your career because you're eating healthy? Oh, I guess. Do you get better sleep because you eat healthy? Yes. Can you think about business or your career more effectively because you get home and you don't have to worry about what's for dinner? You don't get home and she doesn't say, what do you want for dinner? You get in and there's this fucking 5-course meal set up that's all organic food that's done amazingly. The whole house is immaculate. Like, the guy reminds me of Harvey Specter from Suits. Like, this is the type of personality we're dealing with here. And I said, okay, well, how much money do you think that you make from just being able to think clearly and having good sleep and not having to do that? And he's like, oh yeah, okay. I don't know, maybe like 100, 200 grand a year. I was like, okay, cool. And then we went through, and then eventually I hit the nail on the head. I said, you go to all these business functions. Now, she's tall, she's attractive, she looks after herself. And he was pissed because she spends all of the money on yoga and clothes and makeup and looking after herself. And she's beautiful, right? And like a model. And I said, how does that make you money? And he goes, it doesn't. And I said, bullshit. How does it make you money? And knowing that they go to a lot of social gatherings. And I said, what about the social gatherings? How does she make money there? And he's thinking about it. And then he goes, fuck. And he goes, I go to all these events with all these heavy hitters. All these guys are in their 50s and 60s. They see this hot woman that walks in who's smoking hot. And they all come over to talk to me, but they don't. They come over to check her out. And then because she's well presented and well spoken and everything, she starts talking to them. She introduces them to this person. And he goes, fuck, I do like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of deals per year, and maybe even potentially billions of dollars worth of years because of the networks that she opens up by these old guys coming to chat to her. And then I start talking to them and I do all these deals. And he goes, man, I got to give her a pay rise. and it saved their marriage. But it was just because they hadn't had that conversation around the actual value that they bring to the relationship together and what they need from each other. So I know I went off on a tangent there.
No, that was good because it was a good detailed explanation.
Awesome. Just give me the look. Like every person
goes this look.
Every dude knows the look from their wife. Just give me the look and I'll shut up.
Just give me the wind up. That's what I do with events.
You do. Okay. This question here is, again, this has been presented, but it's how do you get on the same page and work together amongst the same goals? What are some of the things that we do? Like you spoke about the start of the year, we sit down and we go through like, what does our year look like? But also, actually, I'm just going to answer this and get on with the next question because I already know the answer.
Okay.
one of the things that we do, and one of the things that I find in coaching that causes a lot of issues with couples, is that they don't have a common objective. They have individual values and individual goals within those values. And they sort of have family goals, but they don't really sit down and discuss how it's going to happen, what the structure looks like. So having a common mission, and I remember having this conversation with you because we had friction.
Yeah.
And
it's always like, I want to do this and I want to do that. Like, how do you, go?
Because you work in the business, you would always say, we work too much, we don't have enough rest. And I remember one day getting really frustrated, and I thought about this, and I was like, how do I fix this? How do I get her on the same page? And I said, okay, let's talk about standards in life. Now, most people don't think about standards, they think about goals.
Mm-hmm.
But what they really want is standards. I drive a McLaren not because I just want a car. It's because that's the standards that I choose to live by.
Mm-hmm.
And when you live by standard, not by just, I just need to get from point A to point B, it's a completely different conversation and a completely different lifestyle. But I sat there and I said, look, you like traveling.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you want to travel per year? And you sort of sat there and you're like, oh, well, at least one trip a year would be good. And I'm like, that's not, what's our standards? Like, what, dream life, how much do you want to travel? And then you come back with something silly like, well, all the time. And I'm like,
11
that's not an
months
answer. Yeah. Straight from one extreme to the other. And I was like, no, what's realistic? And you're like, well, at least 2 to 3 times a year I want to do overseas travel. Okay, perfect. So I write that down on the whiteboard.
Mm-hmm.
Then, okay, do you want to fly business class or do you want to fly economy class? What do you want? And you're like, well, obviously I want to fly business class, but economy is going to save us money. And I was like, well, that's fucked. That's not you're not setting a real goal. You're just saying, this here's what I'll accept.
Yeah, living within your means kind of thing. Yeah.
And I don't think that's nothing that I teach in any of my programs. Like, I believe anyone can achieve anything. You just have to figure out how to make it happen and put the plan together and then build the mindset, because it's only a mindset and a skill set problem to get anything you want.
Mm-hmm.
So you said, well, I want to fly business class. And I said, okay, cool. House. You want we could literally sell our house. And I remember saying this, we could sell our house and we could move to a lower socioeconomic area and we would be debt free and we'd have no problems financially. Okay. We could pretty much just cruise through the rest of life. And you looked at me and you said, well, fuck that. I like a nice house. And I said, cool. So is the nice house $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $5 million? Like, what's the dream home? And you gave me the number. So I wrote that up on the board. And then I put a dollar cost. I said, how much do you think it's going to cost to fly 3 times a year? Business class. How long are we staying? Are we staying in 3-star hotel, 4-star hotel, 5-star hotel? And then what are our dinners? Like, are our dinners just Macca's, or are we going cheap shit, or are we eating street food, or like, what are we doing? And when we calculated it, like, it came to millions. And I said, okay, cool. Now that we know this, what are your thoughts around how much we work? And you were like, let's get to work. And we both aligned in that moment because we both had our standards and our expectations for life combined. Prior to that, you wanted to fly business class, but you would have flown economy because it didn't really matter. And you're sort of like, you were happy to take whatever standard
make do
you could get. Yeah, because it was like, then I got to figure out then money, where does the money come from? That's another fucking, I don't want that problem. And it just becomes too much instead of being honest around your standards. So that's how we did it.
But it's good because then it's also an inspiring exercise because then while you're doing it, you're kind of like imagining this in your mind. You're like, oh, that would be awesome. And so you get into a really inspired state. And then it's easier to have those questions of like, well, am I really working to the level that I need to in order to achieve that? And you can honestly reflect and go, no, I'm not. Like, for people that do have that stuff, majority of them, sometimes it's just luck for some people, but majority of people, you have to like put in this level of work in order to achieve that. So it gives you that realistic view in going where it's not a fantasy to make you work for it. So that's really
awesome. Great feedback. Okay, the next one we have here is, how do you work in business together and not hate each other? LOL. So this I don't know who that came from, but there's a question.
Do you know what I think? When you talk about this in events, is that one thing to really helps is like just recognizing straight off the bat that only 25% of your values are the same as your partner. So 75% are not the same. So 75% of the time, just accept the fact that you're not going to agree on things. So I think that helped. Just having that understanding alone, I think really helps, because you go 75% of the time, it's probably going to be challenging. And if I'm not willing to work through that challenge, why am I married to begin with? You know what I mean? So you have to realize that 75% of the time, I have to potentially work on how I'm going to communicate with that person, how I can look at their perspective differently. Like most of the time, you're going to have to work a little bit harder because that person's probably not going to understand 3/4 of the things that you want or you are talking about or that you're trying to get across to them. So that's what I would start with. Like if you have that understanding already, I think that helps you go into conversations without getting pissed off. Or if you are pissed off, you can internalize it, but then go, okay, I know we're probably not going to agree on stuff. How do we work around it? How do we both work to our strengths to get back to our common goal?
That's an amazing answer. And it segues into something else that we worked on. Was we sat down and we said, right, what are our strengths?
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the time as a business owner, I'm way more courageous than the average person. And I mean, how quick do I make decisions?
Very quick.
Yeah. So if I want to do something, do I need to come and talk to you, or do I just make the decision and then figure shit out?
Yeah, you just make the decision.
Yeah. And so I don't have too much of a fear of failure or making mistakes. I know that I'll figure it out, and I know that failure is part of the path to success. And I hang out with a lot of high net worth individuals, and I've worked with people. I mean, I've coached and added billions of dollars onto people's businesses over the years. And so I'm used to being around people who are entrepreneurial. They move fast, they're quick thinking, they make shit happen because they realize that time is the asset that they don't have. And the longer that they sit there and fuck around and can't make a decision, like if I don't make a decision to grow, every week I'm paying wages and all that sort of stuff. So if there's problems and we're not moving, then we're contracting because I'm losing cash.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that time is the most valuable asset. So that's hard for most people. For you, we used to have that challenge because I would make decisions. You're like, well, hang on, fuck, what happened? And how come you didn't talk to me? And then I would get pissed because I'm like, well, I can't grow the company because when I make decisions and something doesn't go to plan, then now you're frustrated with me and pointing it out that I fucked up and I should have talked to you because you had the answer. That shit just does not work in business, and it does not help a relationship. And so the best thing that we discovered was I sat down, I said, what are your strengths? Like, let's honestly look at what are your strengths. Now, when we looked at it, you are amazing at detail. Amazing. You're amazing at strategic planning or at process and structure. Like we've got multiple companies. You'll sit there and read the whole financial report in detail, word for word. And you're like, they missed the T on that word. And I'm just like, fuck, I just speed read it and like, just signed it. And you're like, sometimes you come to me like, did you even read what you signed? And I'm like, yeah. And you go, no, you didn't.
I just summarize it for you.
Yeah.
This is what you need to know.
So it's a different mindset. I move quick. I think fast. I'm highly courageous. I've got my networks are huge. And so like, if I don't know something, I call somebody, or if we're stuck, there's always someone who has the answer that I'm going to get in touch with or pay a coach or whatever. And so that's amazing because it helps us to grow. But the thing that I lack is your skills, which are the structure, the process, the financial detail, all of those things. Once you listed your strengths and I said, right, from now on, you're the final decision maker in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And then you said, okay, well, you're the financial decision maker in that area. So what I do now is I don't ask Jess if it's okay to do what I want to do in the company. I don't ask. I'm smart enough to ask her for the right advice. And this is where I think most entrepreneurs fuck up, and most business owners, and even just people in general.
Mm-hmm.
They ask the wrong question to wrong people. Like, I've had business owners and they're like, oh, I'm going to go ask my wife if it's okay if, we can hire you as a coach. And I'm like, is she working the business? No, but I got to run it through her. And I'm like, are you fucking stupid? She's not the business owner.
Yeah. Guarantee the answer will be no, because she has no idea.
100%. She's not a business owner. She's not trying to grow the business. She can think of 50 different other areas where that money is going to be more purposeful for her. So you say, I want to spend $20,000 or $30,000 on a coach for a year. She goes, that's $20,000 or $30,000 it's taking away from the family.
Mm-hmm.
So the answer is going to be no. It's a handbrake in most cases. So you should never ask unqualified people for advice. Like, I don't walk to a homeless guy on the street and ask him advice about finances.
Yeah.
Stupid idea. But most people go to people around them they're comfortable with and they're like, oh, and it's only because of their own uncertainty. And by the way, can you just quickly talk about how important it is as a woman to have trust in your partner's decisions, and also what happens when your partner is uncertain in their decision making and doubts themselves?
All right, two things. Yeah. So if you are ever in it, not that you're ever really like this, but there has been times when you've been like maybe uncertain about things, then it gives like me uncertainty. And then like if your role is like, I'm here to provide for us, or I'm here to like, this is what I'm going to do, make decisions, be decisive. It gives me more certainty and comfort as a woman as to like, cool, he's got everything under control. I can trust him. He can lead us to where we need to go to. But also on the other side of things, like if you don't have your shit together and you're indecisive, I feel like that's another load I have to take on and go, well, now I have to do that. And it's like, well, now I have to do this and now I'm carrying you rather than us working in a partnership. It's like now I've got more responsibility. So that's like, what was the other half of it you said?
I think that was the key thing, is that from what I see is that most people, first of all, ask unqualified people. So if you're in an intimate relationship, you don't ask your partner for unqualified advice or unsolicited advice. Something that one of my mentors taught me, and I remember this was a game changer in our relationship. I hired a coach and he said, this was many, many years ago. And he said, I think it was like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 for coaching for the year. And I said, okay, cool, done. Let's sign the paperwork. And I signed it and I didn't have the money at the time. And I knew I would have to go home and figure out how to make the money. And that's the difference between real business owners versus fake business owners, wannabes. Real business owners, they make the decision and they figure out how to make it happen. Wannabes want to have everything certain and they have it all figured out before they make a decision, which is very rarely why they make decisions. You just got to.
Then it's too late.
It is. And that's why they stall so much. He said, how are you going to go home and speak to Jess about this? And I said, well, I'm going to go home and say, I'm thinking about taking on this coach and blah, 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 blah. And, what are your thoughts, and get her feedback. And he's like, don't do that. That's the dumbest thing you ever do. And he said, here's what you do. You're going to go home and tell her that you made the decision. This is what you do. You walk in, you say, hey, I've just hired this coach. This is what the cost is. How do we make it work? And now she's on board because she feels like she's part of that decision and she's part of the team of figuring out how to make it work, versus you just going home and saying, hey, I'm doing this and have no conversation about it. Or the other way around is you ask if it's okay. And if you're asking if it's okay, it's because you don't back yourself to make the decision. And I find that people do this all the time in their business to stall because they just don't want to make the decision because they're afraid of failing. They're afraid of fucking up. They're afraid of getting things wrong. So they hope that someone else is going to give them the right answer or the right decision.
Yeah.
Bad idea. All right. Awesome. I don't know what the second part of that was. How do you rest as a couple and individually?
Well, I think in our relationship, we're pretty aware of when like we both need rest. Sometimes we need to give the other person a bit of a push. Sometimes to go, hey, like you need to take some time off or something. But I think this comes back to that clarity and like what we both want to achieve. Like if there's certain things in our values that are important to us each week or month or whatever it is, we're very kind of upfront about that. Like, it's a non-negotiable for me to have this time per week or whatever it is. And then we just communicate about that. So like if there's a busy week, like our weeks can sometimes change, dramatically. If it's like we've now got all this stuff on, it's like, well, okay, we might need to shift things around. But then it's like you bring that back up like, hey, look, I usually do this then. Like that's still really important to me. So how about, and then we find a way to work it so that we can both get what we need and rest and do that sort of stuff. But I mean, it's essential, like especially when you're working as a couple in a relationship, you spend a lot of time together. So like, I like a lot of alone time sometimes. I'm just like, get the hell away from me. So yeah, I think we're just really, like that stat said about like, if you're only spending 20 minutes of meaningful conversation a week, like there's already a problem in your relationship. So you need to obviously increase your communication into making sure you're talking about things that are important. At least get that in. because then you can set those boundaries with one another. Like, I need this, cool. Let's see how we can work that for you. And then you need this. Let's work that for you.
I think that's incredible feedback. What I've seen is that the most important thing in a relationship is, first of all, the common objective, right? What are we trying to achieve in life together? And you sit down, you write it out, and you get really, really clear on it. And you have the conversation. What's the cost of it? Time frame? What's it going to take to get there? How many hours do we need to work to make that lifestyle happen, or to build the business to wherever we want? Then the second thing is you've got to look at their value structure, and not the hippy-dippy value sort of shit that most people talk about, like the actual real legitimate values of an individual. And there's not many people who really get this right. I would say that probably 90% of people who come to Thrive Time who say they know their values, they're incorrect. You actually have to know the person's values, because I know your values and you know my values. So it's very, very clear and it's very, very obvious. What you start to notice is when they're outside of their values for a period of time, they'll start to get narky, frustrated, something's not being met. And the amount of times where I've noticed and you do the same with me, where you start getting narky and I say, you need a day off. And you go, no, I got too much shit on because you got a million things on your plate. There's tons of tasks. You're managing a team. I'm running a team. And I'll just call the team, or I'll just I'll just send a message out to everybody and say, Jess has taken the day off, without even telling you. And then I tell you, and then you're pissed off at me for about 10 minutes. And then, you might go into the bedroom or whatever, and you'll just lie down and have a rest, and you'll start watching some movies or whatever. And an hour later, you're a completely different person. But it's because I picked up that you needed to have that rest time through the values. You had to go on with your values. Something that's really bad, and I actually had this conversation with a business owner yesterday. I didn't tell you about this, but you'll appreciate it and have a laugh at it. One of my clients rang me up and he said, look, me and my partner are having a bit of friction in the relationship. He's, business owner, and I do some work with him. And he said, we've been to therapy. We've gone and seen a therapist, but the therapist said that it's my fault because my highest value should be family. And because he's done a lot of my work, he said, I thought that was fucking insane. And
why is someone telling you what you should? That's the first problem. Like, that's a
and he said
flag.
Her highest value as a therapist was family. And she's a nurturer, and so she's projecting her values onto the client.
Yeah.
And he goes, because I've done Thrive Time, it was so obvious. And he said, my partner didn't realize that was what was happening when they went and saw the therapist in the past. But after she came and did Thrive Time, they never went back to her again because the therapist was expecting that this person, the business owner, should have the same values as his wife.
Wow.
I know.
I was like, that scares me as to how many people are going seeing that therapist then.
But that happens so much where, and we've had it happen before at our event, where someone gets really clear on their values and their partner's not at our event. And they go home and tell their partner, and then their partner's so pissed off and frustrated because they don't have the same values. If you have the same values, you're the same person, and most people don't like themselves. So why do they think that they're going to date themselves, which they don't even like? Like, it's weird.
I don't want to date myself. God. Imagine that.
Yeah. The other thing that I was going to say, as I segue and get back into these questions, something that my good friend and colleague, Dr. John D. Martini, said many, many years ago, which I love, is that the goal of an intimate relationship isn't happiness. The goal of an intimate relationship is to have a partner that makes you authentic. And I think that's important because this challenge happens a lot in business. I can be fantasy driven, which means like I'm highly enthusiastic, massively inspired, everything's going to go great. And I have a conversation with you and you're like, just relax, motherfucker. Just not that you say those words, but they're my words. Just relax, motherfucker. Just chill out. Now run me through the detail. And I'm like, well, I don't have the detail, but it's all going to work. And you're like, hang on, this is stupid. Let's not. And you're trying to ground me because my head's up my ass and I'm sitting in the clouds somewhere and I haven't really thought through the decision. A lot of highly driven, highly ambitious people get pissed off at their partner because they feel like their partner is negative or doubts them. But it's just I haven't thought through it. Sometimes as well, like I'm bummed out. I get attacked online. I get, we have every now and again, we have like a customer issue and the customer's like, almost always the customer problem that we've had where someone's doing something stupid is it's because they've done something stupid that they won't admit to themselves. And so there are times where like I'm getting blasted because online because a customer's losing their shit because they didn't get their own way. As an example, we had a person who didn't rock up to our events 3 years prior. So bought a ticket to the event, didn't rock up. 3 years later, from that event sends us an email saying, I want a refund. Now, any normal human being goes, this person is like mentally deficient. This person then starts spraying me online. Now, I can get a bit bummed out with that every now and again. You know, I take it personally or I take offense to it. Jess is the first person to pick me up and have my back. Every time I've had my ass kicked and I've hit rock bottom, you're the first person to pick me up, because authenticity is about balance. It's not about being positive and happy all the time, and you're my counterbalancer.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to add anything to that?
There's times when, like I'm out of perspective, so you need to pull me in line, and there's times where you're out of perspective or you haven't thought about something and I need to pull you in line. But I think that's also like what you said there, like you have to be supportive when your partner needs it. And like if you see your partner like going through that, like you getting attacked by people on social media, I'm just like, like it's what you do. You come in and you go, hey, everything's all right. Like stuff that person, like move on. We've got plenty of other clients who love what we do, who actually, you know, give a shit about what we do and actually implement it and get results. Like let's focus on them rather than this one individual. So it's just about that balance and, you know, being there for each other, whether it's like challenging or supporting. I think that's what you can do.
I think they're the words that you brought up, which John uses a lot, Dr. DeMartini. You know, he said ultimate growth happens at the borderline of challenge and support.
Mm-hmm.
I have people who come to my events and have come to my events over the year, and they're like, my partner doesn't support me and they should. And I go, well, why? And they go, well, they should be supportive. If we're in a relationship, they should support me. And I go, okay, let's think about this, because you're obviously not thinking. Should your partner support you if you're an alcoholic and you drink all the time? Should they go and buy alcohol? And they go, no. And I go, and if you're overeating all the time and they don't step up and say, hey, listen, you're putting on some weight and you're becoming unattractive, like get your shit together. Is that okay? What about if you're overspending? What about if you're making stupid decisions and putting the family in jeopardy? Is that okay? And they go, well, no. And I go, exactly. Your partner needs to be there to challenge you to be better and to support you when you get your ass kicked. They're your counterbalancer. They're not, let's get rid of this stupid idealistic idea of that your partner's supposed to support you. They're there to help you grow.
Well, if you're going back to that notion of like 25% of value is the same, 75% different, most people are looking at that 75% as a negative, right? They're going like, here's how this person's different to me and it's annoying and I'm frustrated with this and like I'm going to try and change them, rather than like the age-old saying of, you know, opposites attract. There's a reason for that. Like you should be looking at as that 75%, what are the traits and skills and beliefs and things that my partner has in that 75% that I need to learn from that's going to help me grow? Because you have so many things that I can learn from in that 75% that I'm shit at and that I need to, you know, whether it's just helping with be more confident in certain areas. And you have the same with me. Like I have a skill set but at the start, they are the things that frustrate you the most about your partner. You like can't understand. Like one thing I would bring up is like you are typically someone that's like generally late, and I'm like this is an easy example that probably most people have to deal with. But I like being on time. But it's like you at some point you have to self-reflect and go, well, how much of a burden is that really on my life? And then, but what is there to learn out of this? So like that's just a simple example, but there's always going to be things like that you should be looking at your partners, like their differences are there to help you grow in areas that you are not skilled at. And my differences will help you grow. It's so how do you look at that with a different lens rather than just going, they should be exactly like me or they should change all these things that I don't like about them. Well, maybe your perspective's just wrong.
Yeah, I love that. Maybe that comes up in the relationship. Maybe your perspective is just
don't
wrong.
say that to your partner. Like, don't approach it with that language. But
I think that's such a powerful statement about learning off of your partner, because I remember that you used to piss me off so much because you were always so slow in almost everything you do. And then you are. But the
hare and the tortoise, that's all we are.
Yeah, I'm the road runner. I run around all the time like, fucking everywhere. I'm doing crazy shit. And you're like, whoa, slow down. And I'm like, no, I got a million things to do. There's always a benefit and a disadvantage to everything. Like that's why I study Chinese philosophy and all that. I love the yin yang principle. You can't have the light without the dark, and as one expands, so does the other.
Mm-hmm.
And when I'm erratic and crazy, you're the slow one. And I get pissed at that because I want to run fast and do a million things. But you're teaching me patience and be more calm and be a little bit more methodical and be a bit more thoughtful. The reason why I'm not succeeding at the level that I want is because I skip over things. I'm a bit too erratic. And so you've taught me a lot more patience and being calmer and all of that.
Mm.
But at the same time, when we were younger, there were so many times where you just needed to make a decision, and you're sitting there and you're like, oh, I don't know, I need more information and I need more data. And I'm like, just make the fucking decision.
Yeah.
Like you're trying to save like $50 on something, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to do some more research and see if I can get it cheaper. And I'm like,
$200.
Yeah, you just wasted like $1,000 of your own time. Like, just make the fucking decision and buy it. And you're like, oh, okay, yep. And so I would push you to make those decisions, and you become more confident and faster moving and a better decision maker because of my craziness. But I've become more slow and methodical and patient. Not saying that I'm as patient and methodical as you yet. There's a long way to go. But that's important. And when you look at it from that perspective, you will learn so much about yourself by having a partner who is different.
Yeah. And that's coming back to, this all kind of like links to the same stuff, but why that communication and those like hard conversations are really important, because otherwise you're going to keep looking at all those things that annoy you about your partner. You just build up resentment, and then what happens with most people is they just have these huge blowouts, but they don't end up very productive. So maybe it's a matter of like, it sounds very like, logical and boring, but like sit down, have a conversation, like whether it's once a month or once a week if you're over enthusiastic about it, and go like, well, okay, like how can I improve how I show up for you? Or how can I support you more? Like what is something I can work on? If you're open to your partner giving you that feedback, then you can move together, and like some things that might annoy you that you really do want your partner to change, and then have a productive conversation about it. But don't the important thing is tone and how you have that conversation. Like, don't do it when you're having an argument about it. Like, you're not going to get to a resolution about it.
Totally.
But like, it sounds boring, but put a time in the calendar and just go, look, let's have a talk about some things. Like, we want to grow. Like, how can we productively work through in our relationship? I'm going to bring up some things that I would like this has come up for me. Like, and then just approach it in a nice way. Like, if anything that I want you to improve, if I talk to you I was going to say a bad word. In
a typical Australian word that starts with C.
Yes, in that kind of tone. Then, you're not going to care. You're just going to be like, get away from me. I don't give a shit what you're going to say. Whereas if I am genuine, like, hey, but like, you've got lots of good qualities. I'm like, hey, Michael, really appreciate that you're working hard and you're doing this. Like, I love that you want to support our family. But we'll say if it was about like, I want to spend more time with you, then just bring it up in a nice tone. Like, this is why it's important to me. Like, if you are in a setting where you've agreed to that time to talk about those things, and you can talk about it in a calm and productive way, like, your relationship will change dramatically just because you're actually having a conversation about it, rather than most people just build up so much resentment, and then one day it's just like, I'm getting a divorce, or they throw out that card, or I'm like, I'm just going to leave you, or all that sort of stuff. Like, just, whatever, just dedicate 10 minutes a week or something, whatever it is. And it's like you can move forward with so many issues in your relationship so much quicker.
I think booking stuff in the calendar is important. Like this year, we've done a really good job of making sure every month we have a day which is our day, and we go and do something together. I think this month, next month, you wanted to go to somewhere where there's a lot of the stars and stuff like that.
Like
so
dark sky area.
Yeah, dark sky area, so we can, see the stars and be out there at night time. So we'll just go and book a cabin somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And so that's cool, because I wouldn't normally do that. Last month we went to the opera. This month I think we've got a day spa day booked in. And so it's just doing things together every month, because you can just get so consumed by work and by life. And then, like, we do go on holidays, but at our holidays, we don't break our values. And this is something that's been a game changer for the business owners that I work with. And it makes them so much more productive, more effective. They enjoy life better. Most people go on holidays to escape the shitty life and the shitty decisions that they make. So someone's got a job that they hate, they get cash, they blow it on shit that is depreciating and all of that because they're trying to find some value or some form of happiness. Then they're pissed off and frustrated and life's tough, and then the weekend comes and they're drinking, and then they wake up on Monday and feel like shit and they're back at the office and it's just that drudge. Then all of a sudden they're like, cool, I can book a holiday. So they buy their ticket to Bali, they go over there, they get absolutely obliterated, they're drinking, they're putting on weight. None of that stuff is good. That does not, I mean, yeah, most people do it, but again, you can't have an uncommon life and do common things. Mm-hmm. So what we realize is when we go on holidays, we live our values. So for me, I'm not going to not work. Mm-hmm. I still wake up in the morning and I still have my team meetings. I will still respond to emails and things like that. And sometimes I do podcasts when I'm away. But what we do is we go, well, how do we differentiate it? How do we make it different? So we might go out to a nice new restaurant one night. We might go and have a look somewhere. So we might go on a tour or do something during the day. We will still do it. I still go to the gym and exercise when we're on holidays. I might not do it every day. Sometimes I do it twice a day. It all depends. But I just try to live my values. We both like experiences. We both like food. So we're going to put that in. We're just going to do it in a different location. If you're trying to change your life when you're on holiday, it's because you fucked up and you didn't set the right life up when you're home.
Trying to escape.
Yeah, and that's how most people get it wrong, and it creates these vicious, damaging cycles in their own life. I've got a couple more questions as well. I know we've got to start wrapping up, but how do you keep boundaries between work and home life, and how do the boundaries not get blurred?
I think one, you got to not be so rigid. That's one thing. Is I'm probably the more rigid one in the relationship. That I'm very much like a schedule and planned and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I have to learn to be a bit more adaptable. But I think that's one key thing is knowing that, you know, you've got to be open to adapting. Because if you are just really rigid on how things need to be, you're always going to be disappointed. So that's one thing I know I've definitely had to learn, because I'll be like, we are doing this at this time and we have to be here by this place. And then I would just be like pissed off all the time. So one is like you can set those things up, but you got to have some flexibility to know that things are going to change and you just have to roll with it. And I think that also goes back to, you know, you set those boundaries with each other. Like if I'm doing this, communication, it just comes back to all those classic rules, I think.
Yeah.
Anything you'd add on that?
100%. I don't think you need to have a separation between.
Yeah.
But like for me, the thing that I always teach, and this, I mean, it's insanity. People talk about a balanced life, right? And they go, well, I want lifestyle balance. And I go, what does that mean? And they go, well, I want to have more balance. And I go, yeah, but define it. I have very rarely ever come across somebody who can define what a balanced life looks like. They actually don't even fucking know. It just sounds good in theory. Same as like positive thinking. People want to be positive thinkers, but if you talk to most people, it's the negative times that produce the most amount of growth and the most amount of change and the most amount of motivation. So like the key thing is, how do you live the life that you enjoy and integrate it? So I don't believe in lifestyle balance. I believe in an integrated life. So I can't exercise and that not impact business, but I can't have business and it not impact my health. It has to. I can't work in business and not have it impact my finances and finance not impact my intimate relationship. The more people disintegrate their life, the more their life disintegrates. And the more people want lifestyle balance because their fucking life is disintegrated in the first place. They fucked up. The thing is that I love business. I love health. I love hanging out with people. I love learning. I love teaching. So I just integrate it. And some days I just don't feel like integrating as much as one area as others. There are days where I don't train or don't exercise because it's not like I'm done. I don't need to exercise that day. But then there are some days I like to learn. There are some days. And so I think that when you're trying to separate parts of your life, it becomes a problem. We don't really separate our home life. We have some basic rules that we put in place. So we have a boundary of at nighttime, it's a silly idea to go to bed and get into bed and talk about business because then you rev each other up and you're communicating about problems and fixing shit. That doesn't work well. It didn't work for us. But we will be sitting on the couch watching some TV show and a question pops into my head and I'll ask you about business. You don't get pissed off about it because we don't have that rigid boundary that you spoke of.
Yeah. We
just go, cool, we just solve and we talk about it. And some days I'll start talking about business and you're like, hey, can we just leave it to tomorrow? I just need a bit of downtime. Like, hey, cool, sorry. So again, it's that communication and being flexible with it. But life should be integrated. It shouldn't be disintegrated, and that's why when I travel or when I go on holidays, I still live the same life because I'm always looking for an integrated life, not a disintegrated life, and then trying to find some weird form of lifestyle balance that people think that they don't have. To me, my holidays are work and my work is holidays. So they're the same thing.
Yeah.
How arguments at work can follow through to home and how home can follow through to work. How do we deal with that?
I mean, that is a challenge when you're working with each other, mostly because you know each other so well, right? So you have to be extra cautious of communication in the workplace, especially because it's like what you teach in your webinar series and stuff you're doing at the moment about hiring and people performance. Like, people don't do what you say, they watch what you do. So they are watching how we communicate. And if I'm talking to you like being all narky and like defensive with things, do they get the perception then that, oh, that's okay for me to talk to Michael like that or talk to other staff members like that. So I'm very much in the workplace that, I mean, I'm probably bad for this because sometimes I'm a bit funny with my tone and stuff, which is like sometimes I need to work on. But I try to think of it like, well, I've got to be a role model in the business. So I want them to see how professionally I should treat you in that space, right? So whereas at home, I can get away with a bit more like casual banter, that sort of stuff. But I don't think it's appropriate to do that in front of staff. Have I before? Yes. I'm not going to say that I haven't done it.
Noticed.
Like I've, get frustrated and shit just comes out. But that's what you have to learn. So there's a part of you that you got to just go in the workplace is like, how can I just go, well, in this mode, I'm in professional workplace. Technically, I report to you. So you're my boss. So I got to treat you like I would any other boss. And would I be respectful to another boss? And would I speak to them like that? No. So you got to take that perspective when I'm coming into the workplace. Otherwise, it's not just free. I can do whatever the hell I want because you're imprinting the culture based on how you behave. And so I think that's really important.
I've been talking a lot about this lately with culture. I think culture is the underlying foundation of all business growth. And if you don't get that right, like you can be the most strategic. And I was listening to a friend of mine who sold a company for $400 million. And he said, he's a very, very smart business person. He said, the hardest thing I've ever had to learn is how to deal with people. The number one stress that you have in business is people problems. Sales is people, marketing's people, management's people, leadership is people, staffing is people, staff have to deal with each other, that's people. Like, it's just almost everything in business is people. And most people don't learn better communication skills, negotiation, deal making, how to use their tonality, how not to come across like a dick, how to be open, how not to shut down. Like, all of those things are really important to grow a business. What I see is that with couples, and this has happened with us as well, when we were starting out, those frustrations would spill over into the workplace. So, something happened in the morning, now I'm pissed off, and then staff come to work and now I'm short with you when they're around and they're thinking like, what's going on? Is everything okay? They know we're in a relationship. Is the relationship a problem? Like, is everything okay? Or is it something that we've done? Is it something at work? And so they're sitting there thinking about that, not producing.
That's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Well.
And that sucks. But what I would also say as well is that you do have to be open. I think if you're a couple in a business, you need to be open with staff as well. So I will have conversations with staff. And I remember we've had a couple of staff that have said this to me, but I remember one very specifically. He said, when you're pissed off and you've got to deal with something, what I like is that if you're pissed off with Jess and she's doing something wrong, you'll just bring it up and it's like you nail it. And he said, that's an eye-opener for me in my relationship because I'm very passive and things piss me off and frustrate me, but I don't want to start an argument. I don't want to whatever. So I just suppress it all.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, since I've worked here, I've been able to have those conversations with my partner about my frustrations, which I was never able to do before because that was just his learned behavior.
Yeah.
I think there's a time and a place for everything. I think like if you're going to have those tougher conversations, go to a cafe, have them after hours, go to a separate room or whatever. But I hate the term professional because I think being professional is for wankers. Like when I go into the corporate world, you've got professional lawyers who are super professional and wear their suit and ties, and then on Friday night they're out doing cocaine off of the fucking top of a toilet seat at a strip club. Like that's it blows my mind. I think you've got to be yourself, and you both have to be yourself in the business, but you also have to remember that as a business owner, when somebody comes to work, their energy is at 0. If you can get them to a level 10, by the end of the day, they're back at a 0. And you got to keep picking them up to a 10. Then the workplace becomes enjoyable and they like going there. If they come to work and they're at a 0 energy and a zero level of enthusiasm and all of that, by the end of the day, they're at a negative 10. And most workforces, people are at a negative 10 where it's like, fuck, I'm back here again. I got to do this. Now imagine they come to work and they've got a couple, they're frustrated, they're passive aggressive. You know that they're pissed off, but you don't really know what's going on. And they're coming to work and that's affecting them. They're going to be less productive. You're not going to get the results you want in the business. So you have to learn strategies to deal with that. But that also forces you to become a better communicator. You have to deal with your emotions. I teach this all the time in my events. When emotions are high, intelligence is low. Your emotions use a different brain structure than being intellectual and thinking through things effectively. Now, I'm not saying you need to be intellectual because relationships don't work on intellect. They work on emotional connection and so on. But what you have to be able to do is remove yourself from the situation, figure out what's going on, and then how you can communicate it so that those things don't keep happening or you come to some resolve. The other thing is that everything in nature or life, every lesson that you don't learn, you repeat. And so if you keep repeating these patterns, like someone will say at our events or in coaching, they'll be like, my wife always does this. And I'm like, yeah, but that's because you always do what you do. And then they do what they do. And this is just a cycle. This is a vicious cycle. Who the fuck's going to change it? You want them to change it. They want you to change it. Who's going to do it? You can blame them. They can blame you. Nothing changes. Someone has to make the change and someone has to learn the lesson, because if you don't learn the lesson, you repeat it. All right. You had one last question before we wrap up.
Not necessarily a question, but I think what I would like to talk about, like mental load in like comparison of women versus men, because one thing I definitely notice with a lot of couples is the most common thing I hear is like, oh, my partner doesn't listen to me, right? So like this has happened in our relationship as well. Like you can say the same thing and then another person says the exact same thing and then they listen to them. You're like, are you serious? But I think in that situation, like in order to help our community, I think it's important to understand of like what a mental load looks like for a female, to give you some kind of perspective to go like put yourself in the shoes of your wife or partner or whatever. And then the same with your husband as well. It's like, well, what actually? Because I find that when you have conflict around that, you're trying to get across your point of view and like, this is how I feel and rah, 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 but like the person doesn't truly understand it and they're just trying to be defensive and bat for their own cause. So whereas I think it's important to understand like what a mental load looks like. And statistically, I'm going to put this out there, probably get some hate, but statistically women have more mental load than females. Like it's just statistically true. It's not saying that
women have more mental load than females.
I mean, women then
shit. There's that mental load.
It's at a high now. Mental load than males, right? Okay. So like in a relationship, technically the female will have more mental load than the male. And mostly they report on that just from like from a household, chores and type of things. A woman typically has more load. Even if they're both working full time, the woman will still have more of the household things that they do. So that's one aspect of it. But I was like, if you're thinking about like how a woman's brain works, like they're literally thinking about so much stuff. Like it's ridiculous. Like there's that video you show at Thrive Time where it's just like this crossover of stuff. But like you've got a woman's thinking about, especially if you've got kids, you're like, oh, I need to get the diaper bag and organize, Jimmy's got a birthday party in 2 weeks. I've got to organize a present. I've got to take a salad. Like there's like all these tiny little things that add up so much. And if you put that on top of a workload and then there's like pets to organize, there's family to deal with, that's a lot. But I think there's also this other layer with females as well, that if you're just considering like this is going on all the time with women. So like just think about this is their brain all the time, every time you bring up something to them. There's also even like this kind of safety level of mental load with females as well. Like you bring up in Thrive Time in particular, like how many women in this room have felt unsafe this week, right? And everybody puts up their hand. And I don't think a lot of men actually consider that with their partner. They think, oh, well, I'm providing safe. But like, it's not about them providing safety. It's like women feel unsafe generally. And that's a whole nother mental load for someone to take on. Like I even think about on a nightly basis, I go out and I take the dog out to do a wee before she goes to bed. I'm going outside in the dark, limited lighting on. Like there's a small part of me that has a little bit of fear. Like what if someone is out there, even though you're in the house and it's like particularly safe, but that's a level of mental load that a woman has. And then on top of that again, so you've got all this career, household, kids, family, all that sort of stuff the woman's thinking about, safety. But then you throw into that mix the lovely thing of hormones that women have. And it's like literally.
No dudes ever figured that out.
Yeah, no, you won't. So don't try.
Women haven't even figured that out.
Just don't try. As soon as you figure it out, you're in a different stage of life and you're having a whole other experience. But that's the thing, like literally on a weekly basis. Then you've got this hormonal effect for women is changing their brain chemistry and how they think and how they react. So I know it's a hard thing to manage as a male having to communicate with your partner, but hopefully there's like, hey, this might give you a better understanding that my wife or my partner's going through, she's freaking having a hormonal crisis. She's having like dealing with family stuff. She's dealing with a career. She felt unsafe because she had to walk home and she thought someone was walking behind her. Like that's a mental load that a female, just from my perspective, takes on every day. And it's a lot to deal with that sometimes you just want your partner to understand that that's a lot for me to go through. Can I just have 5 minutes where I can just maybe like dump and vent on you? I don't need you to solve my problems, but just listen to me and then give me a hug and say everything's going to be okay. And most of the time, that's what your partner needs.
Yeah. I know we have to wrap up, but the key takeaway from that as well, I think for most people, if you want to analyze how men and women think differently in most cases, now these are generalizations. It's not every woman's not the same and every man's not the same, but it's a scale or a spectrum. Women tend to think in a web. Men tend to think in sequence. So a dude goes, I need to get this done so that then I can do that, which then that happens and then this happens. And then at the end of the day, I can pull the decompression button. My brain goes, psh, and then I can relax. With a female brain, they're thinking like you do this sometimes. You go, we'll just be doing something like, what do you think about a red handbag? And I was like, what? Where the fuck did that come from? You're like, well, I just saw there was someone walking down the street and they had a dog and the dog had a red jacket on, which then reminded me the other day when we're out. And I thought about buying a new handbag and then the handbag and I'm just like, I have no idea how that brain works. It's like, it doesn't make logical sense.
Yeah.
But it's the web. So, I think that's important. It's also, you said something amazing there. When men tend to be overloaded and overwhelmed, they just want space. I think for most women, if you're listening to this, if you're with a partner who is a man and you're in a heterosexual relationship, the masculine person just wants space. So they get home from work, they've had a busy day, they want to decompress. So they just want to pull the lever and sit there and just blank out, right? And they're letting everything just brew in their brain and they're fine. On the other hand, women tend to be different. They've had a busy day. They tend to want to talk about it, but because masculine energy or men tend to be problem solvers, when a woman says, you know what, I'm feeling stressed out. And then the guy's like, I can fix this. And then they go in there and they're like, oh, have you tried this? Have you done that? And then they're like, no, but you're not listening to me. And then they're going, well, I am listening. You said that you're stressed and it's because of your mother. And then because of this happened. And then that happened last week. And like, I'm trying to fix all this stuff for you and I'm trying to help you. And you're like, yeah, but you're not listening. Men, when they listen logically. If you say I'm stressed, there has to be a problem. There's a problem. That means that there's a solution. We can fix that. For a woman, it's just saying, this is how I feel. I want you to feel what I'm feeling. That's it.
Yeah.
So when you say I'm stressed, I'm like, wow, you have had a busy week and I can understand why you're stressed. Give me a hug. And you're like, oh, thank you. That's it. That's all you needed was that I understand how you feel. I get the emotional stuff that you're going through. And now we just need a hug. Most of the time I tell guys when their partner is stressed all the time and emotional, I just say to them, all you need to do is listen, shut the fuck up, don't say anything, listen to their emotion, repeat the emotion back to them, keep listening, and then eventually she will get up and give you a hug or get off the couch or walk away. And when she's walked away, she's dumped everything and you're good to go. But they can't do it because feminine energy tends to bring things up when there's no emotional connection that gets an emotion. So you say things like, you never do anything for me, you don't do, but that's just because you're trying to get some form of emotional connection because I'm stuck in my head. And so, yeah. Any last words? Not words, but like, so that's a female perspective, but I think it's also helpful. A lot of our customers are business owners, mostly men. So they might have wives or partners or whatever that aren't in the business, but I would like you to tell, like, what is that experience of the mental load as an entrepreneur so that they can get the perspective of like, well, this is the pressure I'm under, this is that sort of thing. So they go, okay, I can understand what my husband is going through as a business owner. And so then that can help communication as well. Okay. The mental load of a business owner is that everything rests on your shoulders. So anyone who's listening to this, every decision that I make can literally cause the business to dissolve. That means that I have to go to work and I have to tell a staff member that I care about that they can't buy their kids Christmas presents because they don't have a job. I might have to go home and tell my wife or the person that I love or my intimate partner that we're about to lose our house because we can't afford to pay the mortgage because I just lost everything and we went bankrupt. That load is fucking massive, and that there very rarely gets considered. And you're trying to figure out all the time that, okay, we've got a cash flow problem, but we've got a cash flow problem because we're growing. We're growing and that's good, but at the moment, not enough money's coming in. In order to fix that, I need to get more sales. So I need the sales teams to operate more effectively. But in order to get the sales teams to operate more effectively, they also need more leads, which is marketing. And so your brain is like figuring out this strategic plan all the time. It's like playing sport in your head and you're the coach. You're just figuring out what's going on. So there's a huge amount of load. A lot of the time when, especially for men, if they are a male, but it also happens with females as well, if you're playing that strategic game and you get home and you just flick on the TV and you just want to watch sport, you're actually not doing something. You're thinking through shit, and it's a time to just decompress so that then you can sort of figure out the game so you have clarity again. A lot of the times I've seen this happen a lot, and it's normally in heterosexual relationships where the guy gets home, he flicks on the TV and he's watching sport, and the partner's like, well, I've spent all this time with the kids on during the week and blah, 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 and now you need to spend time with the kids and I'd love a hand around the house. And they're just sitting there going like, fuck. They're trying to decompress from all the sporting events. They've got like 3 or 4 sporting matches being played in their head moment by moment all day. They just need time to sort of let it all decompress and chill before they can actually emotionally connect with the family. If they will take on that burden and go, okay, all right, I'll go spend time with the kids, but they're still trapped in their head. Most men that I spend time with when I'm coaching them or come to the events, they'll say things like, I feel disconnected from my family. They want to connect with the family, but they don't have the space to decompress to spend time. So it's still a logical thing. And you're going to connect with people in 2 ways, logically and emotionally, or from the heart. If you can't decompress and get out of your head, you're not going to go to heart. So that's the challenge, is like the decompression has to happen to get into the heart. And that happens with both men and women as well. Like if you're always logical when you're thinking about everything, it's hard to feel somebody else. All right, awesome. Thank you so much. This is, I hope everyone enjoyed this episode. By the way, if you haven't rated this podcast and subscribed, please make sure you do so. Please share this with people that you believe it will help, including your intimate partner as well. Look, having a business is extremely tough. Most businesses fail. As we mentioned, if you're a business owner and you're listening to this as well, 1 in 2 relationships fail. So 50% of marriages fail. And then when you look at it, I think it's 56% of businesses fail in the first 4 years, and then another 56% 4 years after that. And most businesses have less than 4 staff. The majority of businesses, I think it's 92%, make less than 2 million in revenue per annum. To run a successful business is really fucking tough. Like it's almost impossible. And it's really tough to have a good relationship, to have a good family, then to have good health as well. It is really tough. But that's why you've got to have the right people around you. You've got to have the right team. And I think everybody is on your team. So your intimate partner has to be on your team. If you're not, then you're not playing the same sport and you're not playing the same game. Your coach or coaches that you have, they have to be on the team. Then you've got staff, they have to be on the team. Your family have to be on the team. Our job is to bring everybody together as entrepreneurs so that we can work as a team to win the game, because it's almost impossible to win the game if you don't have a team. And even the greatest athletes that I've ever worked with, every one of them will tell you that their team's there. They get all the accolades, they get all the glory, and sometimes the business owner is the one who gets the glory and the accolades, and they're the fucking hero because they sold their company or they make millions of dollars every year. But the truth is, it's the team. It's a team sport. So that's where I want to wrap up. Anything you want to say before we finish?
No.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Driven Mofos. Keep kicking ass, and we appreciate you all. Most people waste their life, and I just don't want you to be one of them.